More likely than not, this is the bullshit that people are shopping around. Let's see. So I'm going to show you two screenshots. One, Google's going to lie to you. One, Google's going to tell you the truth. And apparently the kids who are shopping this shit around are blissfully unaware of these facts. But as always, what the fuck do I know? If you're supporting the left or the right, you are supporting shades of fascism. In other words, the Hegelian dialectic, blue versus red, conquer and divide, use your fucking brain, do the right thing, quit marching in lockstep with all of the other kids. You know, this gaggle of, well, I can't say that word, but it begins with an R. It's followed by an E. Next comes a T. You with me? Most of you probably can't connect the dots. Either way, what the fuck do I know? So round two, here, we'll knock this out for good measure. Give me a moment. So this is what people should know, but they don't know, but they should know. So let's see where we can put it here. Article 9, Section 1. And this doesn't really work so well, does it? Titles of nobility. I usually say act, nobility. But Google wants you to say clause because that's how it's worded. And if you Google act, you probably won't find anything. But if you appreciate this, what I'm talking about reflects reality. However, people don't have a fucking clue. So, as always, what the fuck do I know? Often I remind the children of the Ethernets, who are by all rights superficial internet babies by and large, that I could teach them things that they're not supposed to know. In this case, it's superficial shit. But people don't know it. So here's Google, and it's gonna lie to you. As it reads, no Article 1, Section 9 of the U.S. Constitution does not explicitly state that presidents cannot be kings, but it prohibits the U.S. government from granting titles of nobility and restricts public officials from accepting titles from foreign powers without congressional consent. Pardon me. I made it sound funny. The U.S. system of government is not a monarchy and explicitly rejects, I can't say this word, but you guys know what I mean, I can't say it for shit, rule. So the idea of a president becoming a king is incompatible with the foundational principles of the Constitution, which were a rejection of a monarchy. I'm going to tell you something when I'm done showing you the next screenshot and reading it to you, because most people will not read these things for themselves, let alone look up information that's available to you with the numerous tools that are still available to you. And you should have an aha moment, but do remember, this tells you that supposedly, it has nothing to do with kings and what have you. And technically, usually what I rattle off is Viscount, Baron, Duke. These are also titles of nobility, if you haven't figured that much out. So here, Google's going to tell you the truth. No, and see, I always say Titles of Nobility Act because I always think of the Organic Act, which also has a flowery title to it. You could reason this shit out when I rattle this stuff off, but most people don't, and if they knock out a superficial Google search, it's going to lie to them, typically speaking, and most superficial internet babies would believe that shit and run with it. What do I know? So as it reads, no, there is no titles, it does say plural, Titles of Nobility Act, but the Constitution's Titles of Nobility Clause in Article 1, Section 9 prevents presidents from becoming kings. I read that poorly, I'll read it again. Who knows if it'll be any better. No, there is no Titles of Nobility Act, but the Constitution's Titles of Nobility Clause in Article 1, Section 9 prevents presidents from becoming kings. You with me? This is absolutely relevant to all the superficial fucking shit that people are shopping around currently. And they don't have a clue. Otherwise, they would be using this in defense of what their argument, entails. It's a bad way to put it. This clause prohibits the U.S. from granting titles of nobility and restricts government officials from accepting them from foreign powers, as well as, preventing presidents from accepting foreign gifts, offices, or titles without congressional consent. Now keep in mind, if the Congress consented to this, this could come to pass. And that's also equally relevant so long as this phony jurisdiction of the District of Columbia stands and moderates what once was for the people, by the people, the Republic. Keep in mind, that's dead and done, and it has been since the Civil War, but more specifically, 1871, when the Organic Act established the phony jurisdiction, a third party, by all rights, a shadow government. That's what the seat of government is. It's the bottom of the trilateral city-states. Keep in mind, you can't Google most of this. I've been trying to help people long term, but you have to be able to reason things out, and most people can't think critically because their masters are doing away with attention spans. People are using emojis. And when you scroll down, if you look away, a fucking squirrel farts, a baby burps, it's going to drag you back to the top of the slush pile where you're spoon-fed, you know, where you've been trained to digest the latest content. In other words, digesting the latest propaganda, and that's what most people do. That's why people talk about Tartaria and, you know, Thoth, the Atlantean, and other equally ridiculous, unfounded garbage. Those are just two examples, mind you. It also says this is a fundamental principle of the American Republic, which is absolutely ironic because it's been dead and done, like I said, since the Civil War, and it was finalized in 1871 under the Organic Act. People should understand these things and appreciate it. Ensuring and I can't say that word again very well, so monarchy can never rise in the U.S. However, it's quite the opposite, because all presidents are stewards of the District of Columbia, the bottom of the trilateral city-states, which is symbolized by the Washington Monument. The middle of the trilateral city-states happens to be in Roma. It's the Vatican. That's social control having to do with the Catholic Church. The top of the food chain is where all the money goes, where all the money flows. That's in the UK. It's known as the City, aka the Crown. It's affiliated with the royal family, which isn't royal. But most people don't understand this or appreciate it. Each one of these aspects of the three-tier structure is symbolically represented by an obelisk. At least in 2 out of the 3 instances, our masters spent quite a bit of money to move these obelisks to these locations from Egypt, technically. I've left videos on Chessboard Books all about this. For the most part, I think I got 5 views because these are things you're not supposed to know, which means it's censored by the algorithm these days because patently fascist tactics are alive and well. I'm talking about censorship. In particular, people rattling off shadow banning, canceling, hating, polarizing positive vibes only, Snopes debunked, and the list goes on. These are all soft versions of censorship, which is fascism in a nutshell. In other words, if censorship exists, freedom of speech does not exist, and people should be concerned with such things, but what people shop around and what they claim to be involved with, you know, what they claim to be invested in, typically speaking, is on par with people marching in lockstep and quite literally repeating whatever they're spoon-fed at the top of their feed in the slush pile of propaganda. As always, what the fuck do I know? If you hung out, thanks for hanging out. And thanks for hearing me out. Look into these things. Don't buy into them. Don't believe what I said. Be diligent. Be thorough. In other words, put in the time. Most people are unwilling and or incapable of doing so these days, and that should keep you up at night. So I just got home, and what I want you to appreciate, so in terms of recently, a lot of kids have been running around downtown, yuppies who have money for blow-up costumes, and they've been, you know, protesting the ICE facility. Meanwhile, ICE still exists, the facility still stands, dogs of the state are still alive, in other words, they're still breathing. Which assures that these quote-unquote injustices, because they are, it infringes on human rights in general, natural law, but people are blissfully unaware of how that works. It assures that people will continue to be persecuted, is my point. Now, what I want you to appreciate, Portland's been pretty fucking quiet lately, and just to give you my gauge of Portland being quiet, I live in Felony Flats. It's better than it used to be, most of the time. Today was noisy. I left to catch a bus, and while I was sitting at a bus stop, well, prior to getting to the bus stop is what I should say, a section of the road was blocked off. And obviously you could tell that the cops were up to something and something went down and things were fucking shisty. What I didn't snap at the time, and usually I'm good at recognizing this, but I wasn't this time. And it was literally a block away from me. And I saw the people doing it, but I didn't snap. And I saw somebody drop, which I should have thought about and I should have cared about, but I was in my own head thinking, well, I want to catch a bus and they've blocked off the road where the bus is coming. I'm going to have to skate a number of blocks to get to another bus stop, and I don't know if they'll be able to get through. They're going to have to get rerouted. How quickly will they be rerouted? In other words, while I was thinking of all that stuff, all that clutter in my mind, I was watching somebody get taken out, and they're still laying on the sidewalk when I came home hours later. Apparently a sniper was brought in, and there might be another assailant, so to speak, which is what it seems like, because down the street from me, literally, there's a number of unmarked cops, this, that, and the other thing, and it's still fucking hairy. Whether this has to do with what I just complained about, I don't know. Because I live in felony flats and shit like this happens sometimes. One of my sweet neighbors across the street, she likes to remind me and people she talks to when she moved into the neighborhood, and this is prior to me living here. She said the day she moved in, SWAT was here, and that was her, her homecoming, the welcoming to the neighborhood, just for perspective. Again, it's a hell of a lot better than it used to be. Just since I've been here, and I've been here roughly through the duration of the wilderness years, for what it's worth. Yeah. So make of it what you will. Every big city is a cesspool. And things are kind of shisty. So that's what my day's been like, and it's been fucking weird. It's been nothing but obstacles, and that was the first one I encountered going out the door, which made me wonder, because the universe will sing to you and there are fucking themes. But again, what the fuck do I know? I could teach you things you're not supposed to know, and I just thought you might enjoy this little story, but maybe I'm wrong. All right, I'm going to throw on some pajamas. Thought I'd tell you another story because there are some good people here in Portland, Oregon. And some of this might make you laugh because it's on par with Fight Club jazz, but not exactly, Fight Club. This predates me living in this house to begin with, and I'll bookend this with another story. Many years ago, I lived out in the burbs. That's where I first lived when I moved, towards Portland. And at one point, I was dating a gal, not my finest choice in this life, but I was dating a gal, and I was waiting at a bus stop, and a bus driver I did not know stopped and picked me up. And her bus lights were off. So I told her, what is this? Am I being kidnapped? And she was like, well, kinda, if you want to. And I was like, well, what does that mean? And she's like, where are you going? And so I told her where I was going. And at the time, you guys might know Lloyd Center here in Portland, Oregon. It has, just so you know, and this is me painting a picture again. A lot of people will say Portland's okay and blah, 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 blah. It's not on fire. And in many ways, it's not. And I've told you guys it's pretty quiet, relatively speaking. I've had kind of a noisy life, so most of the stuff I'm kind of desensitized to varying degrees. To varying degrees. But Lloyd Center, when I first got here, it used to be booming for the most part. It was still, a happening place. Keep in mind, this also is affected by all things internet. Digital purchases and whatnot, and Amazon has impacted this gravely. These days, it's like a fucking ghost town. I've skated in Lloyd Center a few times, and I mean, it's a dirt mall by mall rat standards, and technically worse than that. I mean, at one point I had to go to an appointment there. There was a doctor's appointment in there. It was very strange. Dead to the world. It's got an ice skating rink in there and a bunch of other stuff. But last time I was there, and this is closer to the Enduring Agenda, mind you, probably 2023, 2022 approximately, but dead to the fucking world. The first time I ever saw Lloyd Center, there were, I think, 3 people running with television sets, and security was chasing them. And that was my introduction to Lloyd Center. That dates all the way back to approximately the end of 2009. Just for perspective's sake. It's Portland. It's a big city. It's a cesspool. So, out in the burbs, bus driver picked me up, and she drove me from the burbs on the freeway clear to Lloyd Center. If you look that up from Tigard, Tigerland, Tigard all the way to Lloyd Center. And that was well out of her way. That's not the way she should have gone. And she was done for the night. She just wanted to hang out and do something nice for somebody. Fucking amazing. For the most part, I've met quite a few good people who work as drivers for TriMet, is my point. And that's definitely a more positive thing I would say about Portland. Case in point, there's a number of drivers these days that I know who are fucking cool. And I've had a few of them drive out of their way, and I've had the bus complain before. And I've told him not to, a couple of them. One in particular, the guy I was riding with tonight, he has taken me to my doorstep, which is well out of the way. But he calls it a courtesy stop, and he wants to do something nice because he and I fucking click. And I've had a few others do the same thing. Tonight, because, the circumstances, he was pushing hard for it. He was like, I'll drive you home. You want me to drive you home? And his route came fairly close to where I'm at anyhow. So I was like, dude, you don't have to do that. And I don't want you to do that. You got other things going on, other people who need to get home. I was like, I'm not going to trip anybody up. And the few times, that he has done it, it blows me away. But it's very Fight Club having somebody, drive you to your doorstep. And it's blown me away when this has happened. I told one of them once where I live, and not necessarily against my wishes, but I didn't realize he was going to do it. And that was the first person whoever did do this. And he hooked a right, and he drove me home. And I remember asking him, because I realized he was off his route. I was like, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm driving you home. I was like, all right, dude, that's amazing. It's fucking amazing. But I have had buses of people before complain at the driver and myself. There are a lot of good things to say about Portland. Not everybody's, off their fucking rocker and supporting agendas that I know of in terms of people like this that I've interacted with. Yeah. As always, what the fuck do I know? If you sat through these additional stories, thanks for hearing me out. And yeah, tonight's been a weird, the entire day and night has been a weird thing. So be safe, take care, and yeah, thanks again for hanging out.